What's going on, Deep Divers? Welcome back to Americast.
Great to be back.
Today, we are diving deep, headfirst really, into something that feels like it's always lurking in the background in Washington.
Oh, yeah.
The pharmaceutical industry. You know, big pharma and its links, its connections to our elected officials.
Right. It's definitely a topic lots of people suspect things about, but maybe don't know the full extent being claimed.
Exactly. That feeling of, I knew something was up, so we're going to pull back the curtain a bit.
And we're plunging into some pretty specific claims about just how much influence this lobby might actually have over Congress, other government branches too.
So our mission today really is to unpack these assertions. What's being said, what info is out there, and, what could it all mean?
Let's do it.
All right, let's jump right in. We've got this pretty punchy statement that gets thrown around.
Which one's that?
Congress is controlled in so many ways by the pharmaceutical industry. Pretty bold, right?
That is a very strong claim. And it often comes with this really striking statistic.
Okay.
The assertion is that there's at least one pharmaceutical lobbyist for every congressman, every senator on Capitol Hill, and every member of the Supreme Court.
Wait, for every single one?
That's the claim. Every single one. Just picture that for a second.
No.
The sheer number of people tasked with, talking to our lawmakers on behalf of this one industry.
Wow. That's a lot of conversations happening. A constant presence, you could say.
Exactly. And it's not just about having people there, is it? It's also about the money.
Right. The financial firepower. We're hearing things like, some estimates show the pharmaceutical companies, the industry itself, spend 3 times what the next largest lobbyist spends on lobbying.
3 times. Think about that disparity. The resources available compared to, everyone else trying to get Congress's ear.
It's massive. And you have to wonder, how does that kind of spending allegedly translate into policy, or maybe lack of policy?
Well, that's where it gets really interesting, especially when you look at drug prices. The whole U.S. versus Europe thing.
Oh, yeah. We hear about that all the time. People like Bernie Sanders have been banging that drum for years, right? Saying Americans pay way, way more for the same drugs.
Exactly. He's been very vocal. And the claim we're looking at is that despite these promises, these calls to lower prices that have gone on for years, not much has fundamentally changed.
So the argument is
Right.
that the politicians know they can't fix it.
The assertion being made, is that the industry's grip on Congress is supposedly so tight that politicians might make these promises on the campaign trail. Sort of knowing, allegedly, that they'll never actually have to follow through because the system is kind of locked down by that industry influence. It's a pretty cynical perspective.
It really is. Suggests a major disconnect between promises and, reality in Washington.
But then you get this interesting counter-narrative cropping up, especially around the current president.
How so?
Well, there's this view being put forward that he's different, that he's described as a man of his word, someone with courage, someone who can't be bought by the pharmaceutical industry, even if there were, past contributions mentioned. It directly challenges that idea of inescapable industry control.
So the framing is that this president is actually willing to stand up to the oligarchs.
That's the language used, yes.
Yes.
Oligarchs, meaning the powerful figures, the corporations at the top of the pharma world.
Which is, that's a very different take than you might hear from, say, figures like Elizabeth Warren or Robert Reich, who often paint a picture of corporate capture.
It's direct contradiction, yeah. It presents a whole different dynamic potentially at play right now.
So stepping back a bit, what about the bigger picture, like globally?
Right. Well, the sources we looked at highlight this pretty stark imbalance. The U.S. has just over 4% of the world's population, 4.2% to be precise.
Okay, small fraction.
But reportedly, our country represents 75%, 3/4 of the revenues for pharmaceutical companies.
75% from just 4% of the people.
That's the claim. It suggests American consumers are shouldering a, massively disproportionate share of the financial burden.
And you really see that when you look at what we actually spend, right? Per person.
Exactly. The numbers cited are around $11,126 per person per capita on drugs here in the U.S.
Okay, over $1,000. And compared to somewhere like Britain?
Compared to Britain, the figure cited is about $240.
$240. So they spend, less than a quarter? Almost a fifth?
Roughly a fifth, yeah. It's not a small gap. It's a huge chasm in spending per person.
So why? What's the justification given for that huge difference?
Well, the argument you often hear from the drug companies is innovation.
The innovation argument.
Yeah, that America has to pay these higher prices to essentially fund the research and development, the costly process of creating new medicines for everyone. We're footing the bill for progress, basically.
But there's a flip side to that argument too, isn't there?
There is. There's a counter-argument suggesting that maybe our European partners aren't chipping in enough for that innovation.
Right, like they should pay more too.
Kind of. The idea put forward is that even just a 20% increase in European drug prices could potentially free up something like $10 trillion.
$10 trillion.
That's the figure mentioned. For more R&D, for global health, it sort of shifts the focus of who should be paying what for that innovation.
It really complicates that narrative. It's not just U.S. pays high prices. It's a whole global funding question.
And you can see how passionate people get about this. There was this anecdote mentioned about Democrats and Bernie Sanders supporters reacting very emotionally to the idea that maybe finally there's a president willing to actually take on the pharmaceutical industry. It shows how deeply felt this issue is, how long people feel they've been waiting for change.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's try and pull the threads together here.
Yeah.
We've heard these claims, massive lobbying force, like one per lawmaker.
Yep.
Huge financial power, spending triple the next lobbyist.
Reportedly, yes.
A history of political promises on drug prices that, according to some, haven't really materialized because of that influence.
That's the critique.
But then also this counter perspective, a current leader who's maybe breaking that mold, willing to challenge the industry.
A different kind of leadership being asserted, yeah.
And underlying it all, this massive imbalance where the U.S. pays vastly more for drugs.
That seems pretty clear from the numbers presented.
So it's crucial for everyone listening to remember these are the claims and viewpoints that are out there circulating.
Exactly. We're not stamping them as fact. We're laying out what's being discussed. Yeah. Our goal is just to present the information that's being put forward.
So you, the listener, can think it through critically.
Precisely.
Which leads us to, I think, the big question to ponder after all this. If these claims about the industry's influence are accurate or even partially accurate, what are the potential long-term consequences for our whole political system, for healthcare access, for innovation itself? It's definitely something to think about.
It really is. It touches on so many aspects of our society. Yeah. Thanks for diving into this with us today. It's complex stuff.
No doubt. Hopefully this is giving you a clearer map of the territory, some of the key arguments anyway.
I hope so.
All right, deep divers, that's our dive for today. Keep questioning, keep thinking critically.
Stay curious.
We'll catch you on the next AmeriCast. Stay informed.